The sun dips below the horizon, and suddenly, everything changes. The village that buzzed with life during the day becomes a place of shadows and whispers. The fields outside turn into dark, endless plains where anything could be hiding. Wolves, outlaws, even enemies from a rival village. There are no streetlights, no flashlights, no electricity. Darkness isn't just inconvenient, it's terrifying. For medieval villagers, night was a time of vulnerability. Danger came from the forest, the road, and sometimes even from their own neighbors. A single wolf could wipe out a winter's supply of livestock. A single bandit raid could burn a harvest to the ground. So how did they sleep at all? How did they defend themselves when the night belonged to predators and thieves? The answer lies in clever planning, community vigilance, and a heavy dose of faith and superstition. Tonight, we're stepping back in time to discover how medieval villages turned the night from a death sentence into something survivable. To understand their defenses, you first need to understand their fear. Medieval nights were darker than anything we experience today. Without electric light, moonless nights were pitch black. Even starlight was often obscured by smoke, fog, or clouds. People feared the wild, wolves, boars, and bears that prowled the forests. They feared bandits, whose attacks came most often under cover of darkness. And they feared the supernatural. Every creak of wood or distant howl might be interpreted as a sign of restless spirits or demonic forces. Darkness was not romantic. It was a boundary between the known and the unknown. For peasants whose survival depended on their animals, crops, and tools, losing anything could mean starvation. Nightfall meant risk. This fear wasn't weakness, it was practical, and it drove them to create elaborate defenses to keep their families alive until morning. The first layer of protection was physical. Many villages were ringed with wooden palisades, sharpened stakes forming a defensive fence. Others dug deep ditches or earthworks, sometimes filling them with water to slow intruders. Even thorn hedges were strategically planted to act as living barbed wire. Buildings were laid out with defense in mind. Houses and barns formed tight circles or clusters, turning narrow streets into choke points that could be blocked with carts or timbers in an emergency. Village gates were sacred in their importance. At dusk, they were shut tight, often locked with heavy wooden bars. The closing of the gates marked the start of night, and once shut, they stayed shut until dawn. These fortifications weren't perfect, but they bought time, and time was everything when an attack could erupt from the darkness without warning. Walls and gates were useless without eyes and ears to watch them. That's where the night watch came in. Every able-bodied man in the village might take a turn patrolling after dark. They carried lanterns, staves, and sometimes simple weapons. They listened for suspicious sounds, barking dogs, snapping twigs, unfamiliar footsteps. Alarm systems were primitive but effective. Bells, horns, and wooden clappers could rouse the entire village in moments. The goal wasn't to fight a battle. It was to wake everyone before disaster struck. Night watch was a communal duty, not a profession. People understood that their neighbor's safety was tied to their own. Everyone had a role, even if it was just staying awake for their turn at guard. Medieval villagers used small but clever tricks to keep threats at bay. Fires were carefully controlled, bright enough to cast light, but placed where they wouldn't set the whole settlement ablaze. A ring of small fires outside the palisade could deter animals and make it harder for attackers to sneak close unseen. Livestock were brought into central enclosures at night, where their restless behavior could serve as an early warning system. A startled cow or panicked goose was as good as an alarm bell. And sometimes, psychological warfare was enough. Villages would spread rumors about deadly traps, large militias, or curses laid on their borders to frighten away potential raiders. A good reputation for danger could protect as well as a wall. fear of the night wasn't just about wolves and thieves. It was about what people couldn't see. Many believed that spirits roamed after dark, that demons or witches prowled the roads, and that evil forces were stronger under the moon. To combat this, villagers hung charms over doors, carved crosses into lintels, and sprinkled holy water on gates. Priests blessed the village boundaries, a practice called beating the bounds, believed to keep out both evil spirits and ill fortune. Even the church building itself became a kind of fortress, a place where frightened villagers could gather if danger threatened. Its stone walls and holy relics made it a sanctuary, not just from physical harm, but from spiritual terror. Night in a medieval village was rarely silent. The watchman's horn, the low crackle of watchfires, the bark of dogs. All of these were reassuring sounds. Silence could mean danger, a sign that something was wrong. Music and bells were sometimes used intentionally to keep fear at bay. A tolling bell at night might remind people that the village was under divine protection. Singing during watch rounds was another tactic, both to stay awake and to let potential intruders know someone was alert. The goal was simple: make it clear that the village was awake, alive, and ready to defend itself. What truly kept medieval villages safe wasn't just ditches or gates, it was unity. When danger struck, everyone had a role. Women gathered children and guarded the fire. Men rallied with tools turned into weapons. Elders rang the bells or prayed aloud for divine aid. Night survival was a group effort. A village that stood together could repel bandits, scare off wolves, and endure long winters. A village that didn't, it wouldn't last. Medieval life was hard, but its people were harder, and their nightly vigilance was proof. So, how did medieval villagers guard against the threats of the night? With walls and watchfires, with dogs and bells, with faith and fear, and above all, with each other. Which part surprised you the most? The night watch patrols, the animal alarms, or the spiritual protections? Tell me in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the medieval night, smash like, share this video with your history-loving friends, and subscribe for more untold stories from the Middle Ages. Because the night may be dark, but history is full of light.